after what happened last night and then the Marco Rubio rally this morning, I'm thinking, what can Trump do? He brought in one of two peas in a pod, and up came Christie, and now we have a whole new news cycle.
No, and that's one of the geniuses of Donald Trump, is he is able to shift the narrative to his terms. And the endorsement by Christie is a big deal, because one of the questions for Donald Trump is, okay, he's entertaining. Yes, he's a vessel for people's anger and alienation from Washington. But can he actually be commander-in-chief? And have a serious guy like Christie say, yes, he can, is a validator for him. So that was a big move on the part of the Trump campaign today.
Were you surprised, Chris? Most of the attacks that came from Marco Rubio, frankly, are things that you can Google. You know, they're available. None of that was new information. None of it was new to me. Was any of it new to you? Were you surprised that it didn't come until this point in the cycle?
Shocked. And you know, I think that if Donald Trump goes on to win this nomination, that the Republicans are going to be talking in very rueful terms for months, for years, about the fact that they let the Trump phenomenon go on so long. You're exactly right. This is Oppo research that everybody's had for months or years, the story about the illegal Polish workers who helped demolish the building to set the site for the Trump Tower. That happened in the 1980s. So the idea that you would wait, you know, and I know everybody thought, well, he's going to self-destruct, it's a summer fling, all of that. Somewhere you would think between August and last night, that whether it was Jeb Bush, whether it was Marco Rubio, whoever, that somebody would have started to bring it out. The reason I think it's such an effective strategy against Trump, Shep, is because of the fact that, look, you know, I know Cruz is going after him on the idea he's not a real conservative. I don't think the Trump voters care about this. What Rubio is saying is he's a phony, that this guy who says, I'm going to help the working class, I'm going to get jobs, I'm the vessel for all your alienation from Washington. What Rubio is saying is that he sticks it to the working class. He really isn't a supporter of the working class. He's the guy who hires foreign workers. He's the guy who hires illegal immigrants. As I say, and as you were suggesting, it may be too late, but it seems to me it's at least an effective way to try to go after him.
The accusations about Trump University and the fraud that the accusation is that it was, the bankruptcies in Atlantic City at the casinos, the hundreds and even more than that workers who were left without jobs, all of those things, none of that stuff is new at all. And that it began last night, and Rubio kept saying, Google it. Well, people did Google it. They were the highest Google searches of the night, with 15 million people watching. But you wonder if any of that is going to make any difference, because you wonder if this anger is so palpable and it has been channeled so effectively that anything that's said now might be, you know, for lack of an even more trite phrase, too little too late.
Well, that's a question, and we won't have long to wait. We'll find out on Tuesday. But again, it just seems to me, you know, why not? And whether it was Rubio, whether it was Jeb Bush, who made a big deal about how he was going to go after Donald Trump, and that he was the only one in the field who was going after Donald Trump, why didn't they bring up all this stuff a long time ago, before Trump had won 3 primaries and caucuses in a row? And not that he has a stranglehold. I mean, he's only got 80 delegates, and he needs 1,200 delegates. But why didn't they do this at a point when he was much more vulnerable, like, let's say, after Iowa, after he had lost in Iowa?
The other main not Trump, of course, Ted Cruz. The polls show different levels of winning in his own state of Texas, from about a point within the statistical margin or to something like 14, 15 points. But if Ted Cruz does not do very well in Texas, is there an argument that Ted Cruz would step aside? You know, he kind of got lost today. He's not a part of the news cycle today, online, on television, in the newspapers. He's missing.
Well, look, he certainly has to win. I mean, he can stay in the race as long as he wants. It's not like he's automatically kicked out. But it seems to me he would lose any real serious credibility if he couldn't even beat Trump in his home state. More than that, though, it seems to me he has to win a fairly convincing victory, because Texas divides the delegates up. And if Trump basically goes to a dead heat, because it's a proportional thing, if he basically runs to a dead heat with Cruz in Texas and then sweeps the rest of it. I mean, remember, Cruz was talking not just about defending his home state. That was the least of it. He talked about the so-called SEC primary. a phrase you're familiar with, you know, with Alabama and Georgia and Arkansas, other places. If he doesn't do very well in a bunch of other states that aren't his home states, he's in a world of trouble, because the primary map then moves up to the upper Midwest and the Midwest and places which would not seem to favor Ted Cruz.
Yeah, and you wonder, Ben Carson, I'm not even sure what the goal there is, but it sounds like fruit salad and all, he's probably going to stay with it a little while, or that's what his campaign has said. And then John Kasich, who you could make an argument, had a pretty good debate. If you, the lane that he's occupying, you know, trying to play the nice guy and the policy wonk, and here's what I've done in Ohio, here's what I did in Washington. He seemed to do what he wanted to do last night, but it got no traction that I can find, Chris.
Well, I agree. He had a very good night, but he had an easy night. He was out of the line of fire. He wasn't one of those three guys in the center of the stage. And, you know, it's a curious campaign Kasich is running. My guess is he's doing it out of necessity, because he doesn't have the money and doesn't have the support. He's basically picking and choosing. Everybody else is running everywhere, especially Trump. It's interesting. Rubio might not get any delegates at all in a bunch of states on Super Tuesday, but Kasich is not competing at all. He's waiting for Michigan. He's waiting for Ohio. And, you know, you can't pick and choose where you're going to run. You have to run every place.
Indeed. Chris Wallace in Washington. We'll watch for you on Fox News Sunday this weekend in a moment.